people, many filmmakers, I want to ask, how does it feel to have all of these people watch your film and be received in this way? How does that feel for you as an artist?
It's kind of surreal because I spent so long, especially I think because I worked on this film largely alone a lot of the time. And so now is the phase of the film where it's getting out and people are watching it, is like I'm having a relationship with people, or witnessing people have a relationship with the film. Whereas before it was kind of just me in a dark editing room or with my camera, like, hanging out with the subjects of the film. So I think in the beginning it was quite nerve-wracking. Just, the usual anxieties of the filmmaker.
Of creativity in general, right?
But now it's kind of easing into it, and it's quite beautiful to kind of see how people receive the film.
Awesome. So for our audiences, how about you tell us, what is the film about?
Sure. So WAJD is a film about 3 Syrian musicians that I followed over the period of 5 years. 2 of them I met in Syria before the war in 2010, and the other I met afterwards in Istanbul. And it really explores their lives and their struggles living in exile, and how music helps them to cope and heal and continue on and provide a sense of connection with their homeland.
I'm a documentary head. So, I was, we read a lot about things that go on in the world in the news, but, through film and through documentary, you're able to empathize with these stories a lot more. And it was just an awesome piece of work. So thank you for creating that.
Thank you.
Now before we chatted, you worked on this film for 8 years, and you obviously knew the men that you followed for a very long time. What's it like to kind of grow with people through film over such a long time, telling their stories?
It's pretty powerful, actually. It was a very intimate and rewarding experience. In the beginning they were the subjects of my film, and then by somewhere in the middle they were actually like close friends of mine.
Close friends of yours, yeah.
So it was kind of it was beautiful being able to forge those relationships, and to film in a way in which it became the camera sort of became invisible after a certain point, which I really that's kind of what I really was striving for.
That's your goal.
It's my goal. And I think also partially because I was a lot of the time, most of the time I was like a one-man band, kind of just me with a DSLR camera and
getting the stories right.
Getting the story, and so it became didn't feel like a film production as much as me hanging out with my close friends and taking out the camera and filming during moments, and that just became a part of our time together. It was also beautiful to witness how they changed over time, and how I changed over time, and how the film I initially wanted to make was actually not the film that I actually ended up making as well. And so, and part of that was how I grew myself as a person, as a filmmaker over the course of
and kind of seeing the changes in yourself and the people, and saying this is the way that the story needs to be told.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's that's really powerful that you take that. As I watched the film, I appreciated the intimacy. It does feel like the camera kind of disappears, and it you can tell when there wasn't a big crew in the room. It's just you and the subject, and you're talking. You get these really powerful moments, and it's obvious that you built that relationship with them, and they became comfortable, and you got true stories and sympathy in that way, which, as the viewer, it resonated on me very powerfully. So, the men in your film experience a lot of trauma, through their travels and dealing with music, but still find hope in music and faith. Before I get to that, some of the parts of the film that stuck out to me the most was when they would tell a story that was just so traumatic and very deep, and then they would turn to the camera and smile, or just this little bit of levity would come out. What do you think that is when it comes to trauma and coping, and what did you want the audience to kind of learn from those moments?
Excuse me. Well, I think my sense of it is, and I'm saying my sense of it is because I didn't live through those same experiences, that after you've been through so much trauma, and witnessed destruction and people close to you dying, after it's the first, second, third, after a while it almost becomes like normalized in a way, and it's like there's a certain, what's the right word I'm using? It's kind of, they smile, but you can tell that there's a lot of pain.
There's a lot of pain behind it.
There's a lot of pain behind the smile too. So it's almost like a way of coping, like a way they've found a way to kind of cope with it. Just like, another bombing,
it's
another
down
thing
again, right?
Next time it'll be me. Next time it'll be you. It's kind of like, so I think that that's kind of what it is. After a while, it just becomes normal and normalized, and it kind of has to, because I think your nervous system can only take so much. So that's
I'm glad you said that, because as I was thinking about those reactions and trying to internalize it myself, I was wondering if it's like always looking on the bright side, or always, for every down there's an up. Mm-hmm. But it didn't necessarily feel like that to me. It felt like at wit's end, you still find love in those ways. And I don't know if I may have to watch the film again to to get that, but that's my interpretation from the audience, from a viewer, and I like to share that with you. So
sure. And I really believe that each audience member's impression of the film is just as equally valid to even what the filmmaker's intention may or may not have been, because it's not about the filmmaker after a while, it's about the film itself, and each person has their own relationship with that. And so I think I would agree with what you said.
Awesome. I have another question for you, just off the fly, just because you mentioned something. You mentioned intention in what you intended. You also mentioned that it changed throughout the film as you grew. Tell me a little bit more about, when your intention of making a story, it changes throughout the film, but then someone in the audience interprets it totally differently. How does that make you feel as an artist? Or tell me more about that feeling that you may get from that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it kind of really depends. I think there are moments where there's a lot of complexity that can draw out many different emotions and reactions in the audience, and which in some cases I'm astonished and amazed each time I watch the film and listen to people's feedback about what it evokes in them, and really each time I screen the film with a different audience, it's different
It's
each
something
time.
new, right?
It's like there's a collective energy that through all the sum of everyone like watching the film in that room, who are different from the day before or whenever, right. And so that creates a certain it's a different experience.
It's an unexplainable feeling.
It is an unexplainable feeling, and so I'm kind of astonished, and of course then that's one thing, and the other is like on a more mundane level is I intended something very specific just for like story terms, and then people just completely flew over people's heads. Then I feel like,
you're like, I missed it.
I kind of failed as a filmmaker.
I understand those moments, but
I think one more thing, which I think might be relevant is just telling a bit about the story of how this film began and how it changed, which was, so I went to Syria in summer of 2010 to make a short documentary about traditional Sufi music in Syria. My father is Syrian, and I'd always wanted to make a short film about music there, the tradition there. And so I went there and made what I thought was kind of more of a traditional documentary with sit-down interviews with many musicians and film musical performances with them and Sufi ceremonies, and then returned to Canada and began editing. And it was around that time that 6 months later, excuse me, 6 months later, the revolution began.
Right.
And escalated into a civil war and the largest refugee crisis of our time.
Right.
Many of the musicians I had met fled and had become refugees in Turkey and in Holland. So it was around that time I realized, okay, there's a bigger story.
There's a bigger story to be told here.
Exactly. Yeah. And so then I changed the direction of the film to, rather than being about the music itself, to being about these three men. These three men, exactly. And there was kind of a large pool. There was a pool of musicians I had to draw, and then I narrowed it down to these three musicians and made it a more personal story about them, which in some ways, well, actually, I feel is gets at the raw emotion that I was trying to get to before, more effectively through these three these three musicians' lives.
Well, you know what, Amar, I'm gonna say mission accomplished.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, that's it for our conversation today. Thank you for sitting with me. Thank you for creating this amazing film, and I wish you much success on this film and the next films that you hope to put out. And hopefully, I see your name in more lights.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.